All right, let's talk Alabama weather. We are now at the midway point of April, and it hasn't felt like April, much more like May. And for a month that is historically very active, it has been quite the opposite here. And we are in need of rain. So, fire weather concerns. That'll be an ongoing concern here as long as we stay dry, which appears to be at least for the next several days. And that will worsen our drought conditions. Those are not necessarily correlated to fire weather. We'll break that down. Possible near record highs late in the week for parts of the state. That is certainly a potential on the forecast or in the forecast. And could we have a cool front or cold front over the weekend that brings about some rain? So, our drought monitor, and again, this was posted last Thursday, and it's surveyed every Tuesday. So these numbers will change. But the point being, much of the state was in a drought. But that doesn't necessarily mean that correlates directly to our fire concerns. If we have low relative humidity, low dew points, we have breezy conditions, and the surface soils are parched, all of which we kind of have here. That's where you see an elevated fire risk. We can be in a scenario where we're not in a drought at all and have fire concerns. So that's something to watch here over the next several days. Rapid onset drought, that's a product that is issued when there's an area that is not in a drought or in a very low level and it quickly can escalate. And essentially, it's the areas that aren't in a drought currently that we're watching, and that's much of central Alabama as dry conditions are expected here in the short term. This is a look at our 7-day rain totals. Now, this is from the WPC, and what it looks at is an average of rain over a 7-day period. And you can see it's kind of a probabilistic looking forecast or a graphic here, and it shows our best potential for seeing rain over the next 7 days. So this would take us through early next week in April through about the 21st, and showing that Northwest Alabama is probably the best bet. CPC also looks at generally an average over a period of time. This is a look at the 8 to 14 day probabilities, and it's slightly above average, which is a good sign. You look at that from a regional view here, and the bullseye is just to the west. So what is that telling me? We still are likely to have ridging in place where these fronts are stalling or getting to a certain point east and then weakening, and that would put the best chances of rain near the Mississippi. So let's go into the upper air pattern. You guys know I love looking at this. So we're going to track, once again, there's several troughs and upper lows that are going to be moving through the um, western United States. All right. So we see these big troughs ejecting out of the Pacific, the upper lows with them. So this is midweek. You've got a bit of a short wave here, and the upper low is going to be notched right over, parts of Nebraska, the Central Plains, essentially. But we remain under ridging. You can see that big ridge, that clockwise rotation affiliated with that upper high across the southeast. And so through Wednesday, we are dry. Let's push this forward and see, can this shortwave offer up any chance of rain? So when you see a little dip like this, it's not an overwhelming trough. Obviously, it's a short wave because it's a short trough, but there might be just enough in the sense of lift and enough of a disturbance to get some rain out here, out ahead of it. And that's what some of the models are indicating. Granted, most of Alabama is dry, but it is something that we will look at here in just a minute. That upper low quickly swings, that little short wave and upper low quickly swing off to the north and east. And by Friday, once again, ridging. You have that high over the Gulf. You can see that clockwise flow in the upper atmosphere. And then yet another trough that looks impressive initially and still is, but remains over the central and northern Great Plains. This will be our next frontal system that will come in over the weekend. You can see this is at about 1 o'clock on Saturday. And what we'll see here is a trailing cold front that'll be out ahead of this and moving in this general direction, and hopefully bringing about it the chance of some weekend rain. Move this ahead to Sunday, and that trough swings across the Ohio Valley, the Great Lakes region. It's a long wave trough that will potentially bring us some cooler air. It looks like early next week, but nothing too turbulent. No big swing in our upper level pattern. We'll have some weak troughing over the eastern U.S. as ridging builds back in the central. And we'll go back to a quiet pattern, it looks like, into next week. So with that, let's go to some modeling here. This is the GFS. This is Thursday. So remember, that's that short wave in the middle of the country. This is all the GFS is showing. So a little bit of rain across Tennessee, the Ohio Valley, but not a big rainmaker here. We go into Friday, and then Saturday, you'll see our next frontal system, or that next big trough I showed you kind of ejecting out of the Rocky Mountains. This will be taking shape in the middle of the country, And you can see where the more active weather is associated with this. You're going to have your surface low and your trailing cold front here. We'll draw that. So here's our low. This will be our cold front, and the rain out ahead of it, not too impressive, at least on this GFS. That's a Saturday afternoon at about 1 o'clock. As we push this forward, the rain just kind of fizzles out. It does not it does not hold together, and that's not what you want to see. This is at midnight Sunday. Move this forward to Sunday morning, and there's just not a whole lot of evidence there of rain with the GFS. Now we'll look at the same period here, but with the European model. This is Thursday at 1 o'clock. Same short wave that we showed with the GFS, but this showing a much more robust return with respect to precipitation. So again, this shows Thursday evening that we could have a decaying line of showers and storms ahead of that little short wave moving to northwest Alabama, and that would be wonderful. There's not been a ton of runs that show this, but the European is, even in the ensemble product, showing more of that. We go into Friday, and then Saturday, you can see that surface high there. We are dry Friday afternoon, where we'll likely have some of the warmest temperatures. And then into Saturday we go. We'll zoom this out. There's your big picture. And this, even just looking at this from the big view here, there's a little bit more rain reflectivity, potential for rain accumulation on the lead edge of this. And this is at midnight on Sunday. And again, we are seeing a much more aggressive approach here with this particular model than the GFS. So this would certainly be the ideal setup for us, but this would show and obviously yield more rain for us, which is hopefully the solution that we get. So time will tell, but two different solutions with those. One thing that models are in agreement with are very warm temperatures here. So we will take a look at those. This is Thursday later this week, where we'll have mid 80s across much of the state, perhaps some upper 80s in a few spots. By Friday afternoon, this will be the warmest day of the forecast period. And this is depicting the potential for 90s really all across the state. I think many spots will land in the upper 80s. The point being, it's going to be very warm. Average high for central Alabama this time of year is about 75. Northern Alabama, about 73. Southeast Alabama, mid to upper 70s. So any way you slice it, anywhere you put it, we are above average. And Saturday, out ahead of that front, we're still warm. We have temperatures in the mid to upper 80s, maybe even a few 90s across the wiregrass, certainly a possibility. And as that front approaches, we will see those temperatures dive. But Sunday morning will be in that transition period, so I don't expect the coolest air to be here in central Alabama by Sunday morning. Sunday afternoon, though, statewide, we should feel the cooler air begin to filter in under northwesterly flow. And then early next week, we will have 40s spill into the northern half of the state, mid 50s to the south, and hopefully we will be able to say we had some rain associated with it. But again, the story is kind of dry conditions, and this is a look for central Alabama, where I forecast primarily. But looking at highs and records for Friday. So again, I don't anticipate records being broken. That doesn't mean I won't be wrong. The ground is very dry. When you have dry surface conditions, you'll see bigger swings in temperature. So model data can be wrong, and we may exceed what is being suggested here from the National Blend of Models. But, most of these records were set back in 1955. You can see Haleyville, Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, Gadsden, Anniston, and then Clanton and Talladega. Both of these records go back to 1925. And again, we'll be flirting with these numbers basically all across central Alabama. And then we look at the 6 to 10 day outlook for temperatures, still showing above average into next week, though we'll have a few cool mornings. And then 8 to 14 days, this will go through April 27th, and still showing that ridging, signs of ridging at least, maybe a bit weaker, but still in place across much of the state. So, by and large, dry conditions are a concern. Rain is needed, and while we have dry conditions, we'll stay very, very warm. So, we'll keep a close eye on the forecast here, and as always, update as needed. Hopefully that answers some questions for you. Hope you have a good start, or hope you've had a good start to your Alabama week. Certainly appreciate everyone who came out for weather radio programming over the weekend in Center and last week in Sylacauga. Always very important, though you won't hear them going off anytime soon with dry conditions in the forecast. Y'all have a great day, great week.